Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
With it being Extreme Rules season once again, we figured it'd be fun to journey back to the origins of the WWE pay-per-view.
Extreme Rules 2010?
No, man, no. We're going to go all the way back to when the E and ECW stood for a general region of geography and not a philosophy of violence.
Oh, we're going to look at Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, because in many ways it was goofy as fuck. Here are the 10 weirdest things about early ECW. Number 10. Unsung ECW originals. The names Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Taz, and a few others are always mentioned when talking about ECW originals, but there were a whole slew of weird names, from the well-known to the obscure, that helped build ECW into the third biggest brand in America anyways, for like a few years.
Yeah, guys like Jimmy Snuka, Don Morocco, and Eddie Gilbert were ECW's big names in the formative years of the promotion and were just as instrumental as Terry Funk in popularizing the brand, but they all left shortly before the transition to the Extreme was made.
Guys like Hunter Q. Robbins, JT Smith, Sal Balomo, and Maddie in the House were all prominently featured in the promotion in 92 and 93, but were phased out for various reasons by the time ECW left the NWA in late 1994.
And Sandman's wife Peaches was the promotion's most prolific valet in those early years. Wonder why she didn't stick around longer.
I don't know, let's see what Sandman has to say about that.
Yeah, so Kevin left his, because, without, oh yeah, that's right.
Okay, well that's one explanation, I guess. Number 9. Random Hawk! So one of the more interesting aspects of the Road Warriors episode of Dark Side of the Ring was that period when they essentially broke up and Hawk went rogue, either getting a new Road Warrior to replace Captain Buzzkill Animal, or when he just did his own thing.
His short stint in early ECW was exactly that, and it wasn't terribly memorable either. In fact, watching his first promo there, let's just say he comes off at best unprepared.
Yeah, well, if your idea of unprepared is rambling and incoherent, then I totally agree.
I don't care about you, your family, or your pet hamster, Fred.
Now, if you'll excuse me, Larson, I'm going to open this bottle of Jack and get super unprepared.
You don't even drink Jack.
Oh, I do now. Number 8. Pennsylvania State Championship. If there's one thing Eastern Championship Wrestling did pretty well, it was the booking of their two main title scenes. The TV and heavyweight belts were treated like big deals.
Great deals.
So in theory, adding another title to the mix wasn't a terrible idea, but immediately after Tommy Cairo won the thing in a lower mid-card battle royal, it was literally forgotten. Cairo had one failed title defense, a loss to Tony Stetson, and it was deactivated shortly after.
Yeah, good looking title though. Look at this thing. It's got the whole state of Pennsylvania on there.
And New Jersey and Delaware, and why do they all look like bodies of water?
Why are they blue? Who made them? Why are they blue?
I mean, if anybody knows anything, they know that Pennsylvania is really a purple state.
Number 7. Bodycount Match. Even before the E in ECW stood for Extreme, Paul Heyman and Todd Gordon were booking some of the most batshit stipulation matches you'd ever heard of.
And the winner of that battle royal is going to get a turkey stuffed with $100 bills.
Did any of them involve an eye being removed from another man's head?
No, that's a good point. But hey, there was the Body Count match at Holiday Hell 93, a match so bad, it was alleged that Paul Heyman thought he'd be fired as booker of ECW.
The match itself was the blow-off between Public Enemy and Bad Company, but the bout itself was a one-on-one fight between Flyboy Rocco Rock and Pat Tanaka, with their respective partners locked in cages.
When the match concludes, one of the cages is supposed to explode, theoretically turning its inhabitant into Dude Soup. In this case, that Dude Soup guy was Paul Diamond, who, according to one article on the website, Ring the Damn Bell, Diamond had said that the cage in question only had one side to it, and since they weren't allowed to use explosives, Paul Lee had some smoke pumped in kind of near the cage and played an explosion sound over the PA system.
The crowd shit all over the match and never aired on TV, so I guess it remains somewhere at WWE's vaults. They really should have brought in Body Count lead vocalist Ice-T to be the special guest referee for this match. Then maybe the crowd wouldn't have turned the bout into the player haters ball.
Hate. That crowd was like hate. Number 6. Blood Feast Fall Fashion Swimwear Showdown. Perhaps the most Steve W name of all ECW big events was NWA ECW Blood Feast, which was a 2-day event in October of '93, which, by the way, was a banner time for music, Larson, given that both Pearl Jam's Versus and Shaq's Shaq Diesel dropped that month.
Both great albums. Despite the name, Blood Feast wasn't actually the celebration of blood you'd think it would be. Terry Funk juiced a little bit in his cage match against Jimmy Snuka, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, even more horrifying was the Fall Fashion Swimwear Showdown, which sounded no sexier than a tame J.C. Penney catalog section your mom would glance through once. It was ECW's version of a salacious swimsuit contest with Sherry Martel, Woman, and a few others competing for something.
I didn't realize they had fall-specific swimwear. I guess like mid-60s in Philly in October. Who the hell is swimming?
Sherry Martel, I guess. Number 5. Tazmaniac! Most ECW fans are probably well aware that prior to ECW original Taz becoming the human suplex machine, he was the Tazmaniac, which might actually take the award for most overtly problematic gimmick in ECW, and Larson, that's saying a lot.
It's not hard to read between the lines here. Seemingly, Taz was portraying a former resident of the island of Tasmania, brought here to wrestle.
Yeah.
Probably against his will.
Certainly seems that way. Gets even worse when you look at his USWA debut, when he was literally brought out, Larson, with the chain around his neck. Oh, God. I feel like these episodes of ECW will probably end up featuring one of those disclaimers at the beginning of them, like how Warner Brothers does it with old racist cartoons. Number 4. ECW's erased history. So the transition from Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling was a fairly slow one. Granted, the promotion changed names on the August 29, 1994 episode of ECW TV, but that was a formality. The actual transition to the Extreme began about a year earlier.
But that seems to matter not to WWE, because they don't consider the ECW Heavyweight Championship lineage as having started until Shane Douglas threw down the NWA title, symbolizing ECW's breakup with the National Wrestling Alliance.
In front of a very confused crowd, might I add. So that's not incredibly weird necessarily, but what is weird is that the WWE on their website does acknowledge ECW's TV title lineage dating back to its inception as the Eastern Championship Wrestling TV title back in 1992. Larson, what's going on here? Why the difference?
I don't know. It's doubtful there's any real reason behind it. It's far more likely an oversight by WWE, given that that place is run worse than Equifax in the midst of a data breach.
Identity theft everywhere. Number 3. Rockin' Rubble. One thing we noticed when diving into the early ECW TV episodes on the WWE Network is that someone in ECW received the dreaded singles action treatment. That is, a wrestler WWE finds so problematic that they have erased his name from their database. And instead, when this wrestler has a match, it is only listed as his opponent being in singles action.
Up until recently, this had been the sole domain of Chris Benoit. Every match of his is listed in the WWE Network as singles action, unless it's a tag match, in which case it's just called a tag match without the competitors listed.
Turns out this relative new entrant into disappeared from WWE territory is the Rockin' Rebel, real name Chuck Williams, a mainstay of Eastern Championship Wrestling, who in 2018 was found dead along with his wife Stephanie in what police consider a murder-suicide.
Not much more can be said about the tragedy. It's awful. It's just a bit interesting to know that WWE keeps tabs on these things and has a distinct policy in place to deal with it.
It's interesting that WWE has a policy of any sort, to be honest with you. Number 2. Surfer Sandman! Perhaps the most shocking thing in watching the very first available episode of ECW TV was seeing the Sandman in a surfer gimmick.
In a what?
A surfer gimmick. Crammed into a tight wetsuit, and I do mean crammed, and bringing a surfboard into the ring, holding it like he's never even seen a video of people surfboarding. All the violent edge we saw later in the character was completely missing.
Yeah! Where was he surfing? Was the tide in Lake Erie super strong or something? Was he just floating down the Delaware River?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It didn't make a lick of sense.
Thank you, Terry. It's my pleasure. Yeah.
So pitted like that.
Eventually, the gimmick was dropped in favor of Scumbag Who Might Be Pimping Out His Wife, which, if you've ever seen a Sandman shoot interview, I'll be honest with you, seemed more realistic than Amateur Surfer did.
Oh, all right, let's dive into those choppy waters then.
All right, here we go. Number 1! Cock angles! Yeah, that's right. Even back in 1993, Paul Heyman was obsessed with the idea of a man being okay with other men sleeping with his wife. In this case, we're talking about the Sandman transitioning out of his surfer gimmick into the Singapore cane-carrying loose cannon guy that became the face of ECW.
Now, this isn't technically a cuck situation, but during late 1993, the Sandman got involved in a feud with former partner Tommy Cairo over Sandman's wife, Peaches. At some point, Sandman started claiming Cairo owed him money for shacking up with his wife for 3 weeks. He demanded the amount of $100, and that all led to a Singapore cane match.
Fast forward almost 30 years, and Paul Heyman, while creative director of Raw, was still moving fast and furious with the weird Rusev, Kanellis, Lana Lashley cuck storyline of 2019, man.
The cuck storyline is in Heyman's box of gimmicks for sure.
Yeah, it is. It's his go-to angle. So there you go. There are the 10 weirdest things about early ECW we could come up with. By all means, do some reminiscing of your own in the comments below.
And while you're at it, hit that like button, if not for us, then for the Rawbserver, who was your editor on today's episode. Rawbserver is awesome.
He's the best. And we also have 10 for the Win merch and Friendo Club masks now available at friendomerch.com. And you can click on more 10 for the Win episodes right here on your screen right now. So, do that.